Hello, welcome to Sabbath School with Branch Davidians. I'm Ed, and I'm here with my wife Mary.
Hello, we're excited you're joining us today.
Yes, thanks for listening. We present or expound on a principle or belief related to the SDA Sabbath School Quarterly each week. This quarter is on the Psalms. You know the line, "For his mercy endures forever"? Most likely, you've heard it many times since it's repeated in several Psalms. But here's the thing, not all translations use the word mercy here. So, in this study, we'll be considering whether God's mercy really does last forever, and also what these Psalms are really saying when they say God's something lasts forever.
As usual, this discussion relates to the SDA Sabbath School. This week's lesson is entitled Your Mercy Reaches Unto the Heavens and tries to help us investigate and understand the eternal nature of God's mercy. Of course, based on the assumption that mercy is the correct word in the line, "For his mercy endures forever," in Psalms like Psalm 136. For example, one of the discussion questions for Friday asks, what are the practical implications of the fact that God's mercy is everlasting for the people's salvation? Why does this not mean that one can continue sinning because God's mercy is forever? And that's from the Sabbath School Quarterly, Friday, February 16th, 2024.
Of course, mercy, as most people understand it, like forgiveness, is only needed in the face of a trespass, or at least that's the case with God's mercy. Evil people can exercise a sort of mercy too, for example, in deciding not to kill a victim. Fundamentally, mercy is about someone not inflicting punishment or harm when they could if they wanted to. Since God only punishes the guilty, then sin is the only occasion when God's mercy is necessary. So, to ask this discussion question another way, why would there be any need for God's mercy to be everlasting if there will be no more trespassing going on in heaven?
Now, as SDAs, we all believe that probation closes at some point. And if you search Ellen White's writings for the terms mercy and probation, you'll find many places where she speaks of the close of probation as a time when the door of mercy will be shut forever and there will be no more opportunity for mercy. And she taught quite plainly against the idea of a second probation. So we can see how dangerous it would be for someone to think God's mercy in the face of trespasses or wrongdoings is everlasting, since this would be equivalent to the belief in no close of probation. And even if someone does understand that probation closes for them at some point, if we think God is eternally merciful in the face of wrongdoings, we might not grasp the gravity and reality of our probation actually closing one day, and thereby become complacent in our battle against temptation to sin, and maybe never overcome every temptation in the strength of the Mighty One, and miss our opportunity to secure heavenly citizenship, to miss our opportunity to fit ourselves for the company of sinless angels.
So, what gives? Well, as we mentioned earlier, there's a translation issue to consider here. The Quarterly is using the New King James Version here, but if you look up one of these mercy verses in the Psalms, like Psalm 136:23, in a bunch of different translations, you will see that mercy is not always the English word used to translate the Hebrew word here. The Hebrew word translated as mercy in the New King James Version of Psalm 136 is hesed. Some other translations of this word include loyal love, loving kindness, faithfulness, steadfast love, etc. These words have a very different connotation from mercy, and that they do not necessarily involve sin as a condition for employment.
So, when trying to understand what a scripture is saying, or when trying to understand what any person is saying, we really need to first define our terms. In order to have effective communication or meaningful conversations, we need to all have a shared understanding of terminology. This, of course, requires effort, not only for understanding modern conversations between people today, but especially when it comes to trying to understand the meaning of things written a long time ago, whether it be the writings of the SDA pioneers over a century ago, or things written in a dead language like ancient Hebrew. As a side note, people do not speak ancient Hebrew anymore. modern Hebrew is actually quite different from biblical Hebrew. So, in order to make every effort to understand the original intent of the author, we need to ultimately look at how each word was used in the author's language.
And we need to investigate these ancient Hebrew writers' words or ancient Greek writers' words with a mind free from theological bias or prejudice in order to ensure we are following the original meaning of the author rather than a religious tradition. We should make sure we're open to follow whatever the evidence leads to for the meaning of any word.
The ancient Hebrew word traditionally translated mercy in the phrase, His mercy endures forever, is hesed. As we've already mentioned, translators have different understandings of the meaning of this word, as is apparent from the differences between translations. The only way to differentiate between these interpretations of the word is to actually look up how it is used ourselves. Ideally, we'd go through every occurrence of the word in ancient Hebrew writings, but that would be much more than we have time for today.
Some places or contexts that the word hesed is used in don't enable us to determine which translation more closely conveys the meaning of the Hebrew word. In other words, in some places, the meaning mercy makes sense, as does loving kindness and several other options. But there are other instances in which it is more apparent some of those possible meanings actually don't make sense, so it enables us to cancel them out and land on a clearer understanding of the meaning of the word.
One such place is 2 Samuel 16, verses 16 through 17. The context is that Absalom has just usurped the throne of David. Here's how it reads in the World English Bible. Other than that, we'll read the word hesed where it occurs rather than the English translation. Quote, when Hushai the Archite, David's friend, had come to Absalom, Hushai said to Absalom, "Long live the king! Long live the king!" Absalom said to Hushai, "Is this your hesed to your friend? Why didn't you go with your friend?" Close quote.
So what's going on here? Well, it looks like Hushai is joining Absalom's side and is thus betraying David. Is Hushai's mercy toward David the issue at hand? No, it's actually his loyalty or commitment to David. Clearly, the meaning of hesed must be something like commitment, loyalty, or devotion. And it turns out that this meaning actually makes sense in every occurrence of hesed in ancient Hebrew writings, including in the Psalms that use the phrase, His hesed endures forever. And of course, God's devotion can and will endure forever.
Now, just because God's devotion endures forever, does this mean his devotion will continue for everyone, regardless of their response to it? We can find an answer to this in Psalm 18:25, which also uses the word hesed. The psalmist there says to God, quote, with a devotee, you devote yourself, or with the devoted, you will devote yourself. Now, this tells us that God's devotion, while it lasts forever, is conditional. He's devoted to those who are themselves devoted.
We see this same sentiment expressed in Exodus 20, verse 6. Here, Yahweh says regarding himself that he is working devotion, hesed, for thousands, for those loving me and for those keeping my instructions. Again, we have a condition to receiving God's devotion, his hesed, which is keeping his instructions or commandments.
So what have we learned in this study? First, we saw that, in truth, the time of God's mercy for sinners will eventually come to an end. In the everlasting future, it will certainly be true that the redeemed saints will have been recipients of God's mercy, but it's not like God will need to keep exercising mercy forever, since there will be no occasion in which someone will do something worthy of punishment for God to decide not to punish them. But as we've seen, not all translations say God's mercy endures forever anyway. So we looked up what the word traditionally translated mercy is in these cases. The word is hesed, and by investigating how this word is used throughout ancient Hebrew writings, we can see that it really doesn't mean the same thing as the word mercy. Instead, it means something much more like loyalty, commitment, or devotion. And lastly, we saw that God's devotion is conditional. He devotes himself to those who are themselves devout, and with them, his devotion will continue forever.
Thank you for staying with us till the end. We invite you to visit our website, www.bdsda.com, to learn more about who we are and, just as important, who we are not. Please join us each week as we will continue to offer new and interesting insights for your Sabbath School studies.
And if you want to keep up with our new studies as they're published, we recommend subscribing. We're on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on plenty of other podcast apps. Links for subscribing are in the description.
God bless.
Many blessings.